Hello and welcome to another Pistons post-game reaction. Tonight, not nearly as exciting as last night was as today from the players, the coaching decisions. Everything was just kind of clunky. Even the shot clock ended up going off, and they had to do it by kind of just by the skin of their teeth. I think they were using stopwatches and having the announcers announce how much time was left right on just through the PA system. And it really seemed like it was just kind of like it reminds you of like one of your high school games or something like that. But I think the biggest news coming out of tonight's loss is it's obviously a pretty disappointing loss to lose to a team like the Hawks, and they couldn't stop Trae Young at all in the first half. And in the second half, he just kind of coasted by. He ended up finishing with 37 points, but 26 of those came in the first half, where he was he was on like 60% shooting too. So Trae Young was absolutely killing our defense tonight. And one of the things that, is kind of going to be the biggest takeaway from this game is Reggie Jackson's injury. His injury history, his injury proneness, whatever you want to call it, kind of reared its ugly head again. Injury is not good, exactly. So he had some back issues prior to today. And according to Rod Beard on Twitter, it was lower back tightness that ended up sending him to the locker room. You could see it. It happened pretty early in the third quarter with about 9 minutes to go, where he went back. He hobbled up the court. They played another possession, and then he was immediately pulled for Tim Frazier. So the silver lining in that is for everybody in the you have to start Derrick Rose camp. Derrick Rose, if Reggie obviously ends up missing time from this, Derrick Rose is going to be the one that gets to pick up those minutes, and Derrick Rose is going to be the one that ends up starting in place of Reggie Jackson. And that was the lone bright spot tonight was Derrick Rose. He played tremendous. He finished, it looks like here, 11 to 16, but I know he was 10 for 12 at one point. 27 points, 3 assists, piggybacking off of his strong game last night. Andre Drummond had another double-double, 21 points, 12 boards, 2 assists, 4 steals, and a block. So he had active hands on defense, but just watching the game, it didn't really seem like Drummond was all that engaged defensively. There are a couple times where he was really slow to help, and it either drew a foul, which he had 4 of, or he was just there too late, and they ended up getting the easy basket out of it. So overall, not really a good effort tonight from the team. It was a really tight first half. We ended the first half on a 12-0 run, and we took the lead by 3 after a big Langston three-pointer, and then they asked him in the halftime interview, what can you do to slow down Trae Young? And he said, just let me sick him. And I thought that was really cool because the crowd was really hype about Langston's three-pointer. Sorry, I finished yesterday with my opinion. I still stand by. Oh, he's talking to Troy Sports Nation. There it is. I see you, Brian. So you're the opinion they should tank. I'm not of the opinion. I'm not saying they should tank yet this year, but the Reggie injury, depending on kind of how big it is obviously going to be a pretty huge blow to us, because regardless of what you think of Reggie Jackson, if you think he's a good player or not, if you think he should even be starting or not, we need bodies, especially at the point guard position. Because if Derrick Rose is starting, our next ball handlers are going to be Tim Frazier, and then we'll probably ask Bruce Brown to play the point, and maybe you'll see even a little a Shfi, is it Mihailuk? I think is how you say his last name. You see him get some run at point guard too if one of these guys ends up going down, as well as Luke off the bench. But kind of going back to what I was saying, just about the effort in general. Like I said, at the end of the first half, the arena was really hyped. 12-0 run. Langston Galloway had that interview going into halftime where he said he was going to sick him, just sick him on Trae Young, and that's how the Pistons were going to win. And then in the second half, it was a completely different story. They scored 30. They had some garbage points at the end, because I want to say it's 35, but that's not right. So they end up scoring 37 points total in the second half, which you can absolutely not do in today's NBA and expect to win any game if you're only going to score 37 points in either the first half or the second half. And to kind of give you a frame of reference, they scored 32 points in the first quarter and 31 in the second. So for them to only score 37 in an entire half means that things went terribly, terribly wrong. And they did On the offensive end, for everybody that wasn't named Derrick Rose or Andre Drummond, Derrick Rose and Drummond were a combined, let's see here, 19 to 28, which is tremendous efficiency. And everybody else, nobody else was even over 50%. So you had Luke Kennard go 3 of 12, Langston Galloway going 2 of 9, Tim Frazier 2 of 5, Thon Maker 0 for 1, Bruce Brown 1 for 3, Tony Snell 3 for 8, Reggie Jackson, before he got hurt, he was only shooting 2 for 8, and then Markieff Morris, who hasn't played well in either of the first two games, shot 3 of 11. So the Pistons as a team shot 41%, which is terrible. But if you take away like the 70% that Drummond and Rose shot, there's really no telling how bad they would have been. They probably would have been around 33%. Well, it's on threes again, 10 of 37. This is a team that shot a lot of three-pointers, but they didn't make any of them. Just getting a little bit over 1/4 of their three-pointers to fall. So it's something that you're never going to be able to go ahead and obviously rely on. Pistons are already missing Blake Griffin. That is 1,000% true. You saw Blake obviously Blake in the introductions tonight if you watched when the game first started. And throughout the game, you could tell that they were really, really missing him. And when they started to press, are those moments where you miss Blake Griffin to kind of just either go get you a basket or just calm everybody else down and let them know, hey, it's going to be all right. This game's not going to end up getting away from us. So obviously, the quicker Blake can get back, the better. Especially if Reggie's injury is something that's going to keep him sidelined for a couple games, or even if it's going to be something that's been lingering. Because one of the other things about Reggie Jackson isn't just the amount of games that he missed. It's you can tell when he's playing hurt. And again, if you don't think he's good when he's at 100%, that's obviously your prerogative. But one thing that we all know is whenever Reggie plays injured or hampered or hobbled or whatever you want to call it, he is not effective. He doesn't have the explosiveness, that he had when he came here from Oklahoma City, and he can't run the pick and roll effectively. It seems like that affects his confidence, which then in turn affects his energy, and then he just becomes a negative on the court, which is obviously something that you can't happen, especially when your backup point guard, as well as Derrick Rose, has played. They still want to manage his minutes, and it's still the right move to manage his minutes, so that's what they're going to do. They're not just going to go ahead and throw Derrick Rose in for 35 minutes a night, because that's going to be how Derrick Rose ends up getting hurt. And the only thing worse than one hurt point guard is obviously two. And then you're counting on Tim Frazier to, be leading your team and ball handling way more than he should be. Surprise, surprise, Reggie is injured. Yeah, again, it's something that reared its ugly head, and you probably thought just at some point of the season Reggie Jackson was going to get injured. I think that probably would have been a fairly safe assumption, just given his injury history. Hello, sir. How you doing? But you obviously didn't expect it to become, in the first couple games of the season. One of the other things that was pointed out to me tonight by one of my friends, actually Michael at Detroit Sports Nation, who works. He goes to every game, basically just kind of as part of the media. And he said, at least before tip off, there wasn't even 50% capacity in the stadium. And I think part of the reason for that was Blake, but also it's something that Blake said last year that I think really rings true for the Pistons is they have to prove that they're a winner. Last year they had that 5-game winning streak, and then there were people that started to show up to the games and started voicing their support, pretty vocally, that obviously the players heard and they super appreciated. And then they went on and they lost the next couple of games. And Blake said it in one of the post-game interviews, we just did a good job of losing all the fans that we gained from our winning streak. And that's something that really rings true. And I think you saw it tonight. You probably noticed the amount of empty seats or even just red seats that you saw on the television broadcast. And then obviously they had the shot clock thing where it went off, and that is something that I never want to have happen again. Thankfully not old enough to remember a time when there just wasn't a shot clock in the NBA and you couldn't figure out what was going on. So to watch an NBA game without a shot clock and it just to say like fourth quarter in the corner is something that I never ever want to subject myself to again, because that was maybe the worst viewing experience that I personally have ever had watching a basketball game. And obviously, it didn't help that my team was out there getting busted up pretty good by the Atlanta Hawks. And as much as I love Trae Young as a player, I don't love Trae Young when he's playing against the Pistons and he's doing all the things that he was doing in the first half, hitting 3-pointers while getting fouled and then doing push-ups on the court, hitting 3-pointers from just past the half court logo. It's not something that you want to see anybody do to your team, because those are the things that really kind of get deflated. And even though they were able to go ahead and have a lead at the end of the first half, one of the things that I thought was going to be a constant theme, at least throughout the game, and it kind of reared its head later, was every time it would seem like the Pistons would get close, because the Hawks jumped out to an early lead, is every time the Pistons would get close, they'd get within 4 points, 5 points. Sometimes it'd be a 1-possession game, 2 points, 3 points. Trae Young or another member of the Hawks would hit a three, and it wasn't just a normal corner three that just splash. It was one of those logo threes. It was one of those threes where they're getting fouled. It was a three off of something that had been missed before, and then they got the offensive rebound and they threw it back out, and then they were able to get it. So that kind of stuff in the first half, it didn't end up costing them because, like I said, they had the lead going into halftime. But if you're just kind of looking at the game trends and, this is kind of how it's going to be, it's something that ended up happening a lot in the second half, to the point where in the fourth quarter, either the Pistons were just absolutely deflated. And they mentioned on the broadcast, which I thought was a really good point, about the just the game flow and the cadence being so messed up by the shot clock and just being messed up by everything else that the Pistons were trying to do, that I think when it was like 98-90 with probably about 5 minutes left, I don't want to say the Pistons quit or they checked out, but they just didn't have enough juice or enough gas left in the tank, because the game had just kind of been clunking along so long at that point, where if you think about it, like your car is just clunky down the road. Eventually it's going to break down, and that's kind of what happened to the Pistons tonight at the end of the fourth quarter. So it was sad to see them obviously not get the win. You're still impressed with Derrick Rose. I can't see how you're not. So at 11-16, but he really played better than that. Like I said, he was 10-12, and then obviously kind of trying to force some things at the end to make stuff happen, and that's always going to knock your field goal percentage down. But that was encouraging. Drummond, he played well on offense, but he didn't seem to be as engaged tonight as he was last night. One thing that you do like to see from Drummond, though, and just from anybody in general, is 5 out of 6 free throws, but especially from Drummond coming off an 8-10 performance. And then even what he was able to do last year, I think he hit close to like 60, 65-ish%. It's just off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact number, but that's something, given his early woes in his career from the free throw line, being like the worst free throw shooter of all time. That's something that you really enjoy to see, and it's not to say that he's not going to have like a 4 of 10 night sometime this season, but he's probably going to be a lot closer to 65-70% than he is back down to 40 and 50 that some Pistons fans have kind of ended up just getting used to from Andre Drummond. Looking forward, next game they have against the Sixers, and it's a game on paper where it doesn't look like they would win, because the Sixers and the Bucks are the two favorites to come out of the East. The Bucks might be the better team, but the Sixers have more talent than the Bucks do. And it's a game that you're playing without Blake. And last year, we all know Blake had that 50-point game against the Sixers. And you don't have him. You have a couple other pieces that you didn't have, but we still don't know the status of Reggie Jackson's injury. And you're obviously going in to face a loaded team without your best player. So it doesn't look like that game is the 26th. Excuse me. So that would be on Saturday. It doesn't look like that's going to be an outcome that we're ended up happy with, but maybe it'll be kind of payback from the basketball gods, because if you went into tonight, you thought there's probably no way that we're going to lose to the Hawks, who are a worse team. And although we were playing the second half of a back-to-back, it's still our home opener. So it's a game that the Pistons should have been really charged up for, and being a team that is better than the Hawks, because obviously despite tonight, they're still a better team than the Hawks. They're going to finish way higher in the standings than the Atlanta Hawks will. And I like some of the players the Hawks have, but as a team, they're just not there yet. It's a deflating loss, as deflating of a loss, that you can have in game 2 of the season. Obviously, there's still 80 games left, and a whole lot can happen. This isn't season defining, of course, or anything like that, but it's a game that you expected to win, and when you expect to win and you don't, it's always, so it always just sucks. It's always a bummer. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys tonight. I'll do my best to be here on Saturday for you. Let me take a look at what time that game is, because I am headed out to the Michigan State and Penn State game. It's a game I'm excited to go to, although I don't know that my Spartans are going to be able to pull it out. But yeah, okay. So they play the Sixers at 7 at home, so I should be able to make it on live for you guys in time. But thank you guys for sticking with me. Make sure you check us out on the Sports Carnage podcast. We actually just dropped a new episode today talking about the World Series, talking about the Lions trading Quandre Diggs. So it's not all Pistons talks. We talk, really just about everything that's going on in the world of Detroit sports right now. So, and just sports in general. So make sure you check that out. You can find us on Podbean. You can find us on iTunes. We just dropped a YouTube channel, which is going to have all of our Piston reactions, our Quandre Diggs reaction that we had on there. So make sure you check it out. It's just Sports Carnage, spelled exactly how it sounds. Check us out on YouTube, Podbean, iTunes. Other than that, thank you guys for, again, joining me tonight, and I will see you on Saturday. Have a good one.